Hello and welcome to ETAuto uh, presents Startup Adda, a station for innovation. This is a program that is going to bring all the innovators, startup founders to brainstorm and give us a peek into the future of mobility industry. So all across the mobility startups will be featuring in this, and this episode is going to be in three parts. The first part will be a discussion and brainstorming with the founders, investors, and the second part will be we'll call in an expert to give their take on particular business or the company. In the third segment, we will take questions directly from you guys. So stay tuned and keep posting your questions with hashtag Startup Adda. So welcome to ETAuto Startup Adda. This is the zero episode, and what could be a better people than Swapnil and Tarun Mehta, the founders of Ather Energy, India's probably one of the biggest in terms of potential, or you can say one of the major startups in electric scooter that we had. The startup got early investors, or I think multi round of investment from the likes of Hero MotoCorp, from Bini Bansal and his other co-founders. So it speaks a lot about the potential or the belief that the ecosystem had in on the Ather Energy and Swapnil and Tarun. Nice to have you guys here at the beginning of the this program and in the zero episode of ETAuto Startup Adda. Thank you so much. Just want to understand your formative years. How did you land up into starting a e-scooter business, and what was the idea? How did you get into?
Hey, Hanavi, thanks for having us over. We actually, Swapnil's been thinking of starting an energy company since the second year of college. And even by the time I had started working with him, he had already come up with the name Ather Energy. So since 2009, we've been calling ourselves Ather Energy and trying to figure out how to do something in the energy space. So it's a fairly old passion that way. Um, we tried doing a lot of things at college, but none of them went to production. So Ether Energy remained essentially just a name, just two of us thinking about doing something, not a real company. But post graduation, we had an idea for battery packs, lithium-ion battery packs, and that idea took us down this rabbit hole of figuring out what electric vehicles is all about, because obviously batteries will play a pretty critical role there. So that's how, after graduation, 6 months of working in different companies, we sort of came back and decided to start Ether this time, initially as a company that will build battery packs. But within a few months itself, we kind of pivoted and realized that we don't want to just build batteries. We want to actually build complete vehicles. Because the customer's problem is not technology, the customer's problem is product. So that's
Swapnil,
how things began.
so it's Swapnil's, craving to get into the energy space. What really, made you think about EV or battery pack or the energy space? Why did you want to be here? Why not so
Uh,
many things? It's a IT age. Everybody was going after IT innovation, IT startup. Why did you choose this? Manufacturing, which is not that cool. Now it has certainly become cool because you guys are there and a lot of people have come in, but it was not very cool in those days. What really triggered you?
we had a saying, make manufacturing cool again. So that was probably the reason. But okay, so jokes apart, energy domain was something which was quite intriguing. Most people don't see energy in a way it exists around us. We just look at, okay, electricity comes, we pay a bill on petrol prices is what we worry about. But the kind of influence energy has on our lives, every single penny which you pay out of your pocket for any service or any product is in a way linked to the cost of energy, because everything starting from mining to converting something into a product, everything, a major cost of everything is still the energy which you pay for it. And the quality of life of individuals also heavily depends on how well the access to energy for everyone is. Energy also has a different problem with it, that if you use energy, we need a lot of energy, but if you use energy from a source which is not sustainable, then can cause a lot of problems. So on one side, it is really important for the humanity to sort of succeed, to have a lot of access to energy. But at the same time, if you don't use it from the right sources, it's gonna actually cause doom for the humanity. So and it was a very interesting problem in that particular sense. It's quite intriguing, but at the same time, it's quite and it has a lot of potential to be disrupted. And I think that was the primary reason why we chose to work on the energy field.
So, what were the initial challenges that you guys tried to overcome when you were floating this company? If you could discuss a bit of early stage of challenges that you faced and how did you overcome? And did
I'd
you
say
toy with another idea also, or it was only the e-scooter or the battery pack that you thought that this is the business you want to get into? And how easy it was for Swapnil to convince Tarun to get into this, and how did it work for both of you?
so. You should take this.
Okay, starting primarily the point of getting into the electric vehicles. So I think it was partially from both of us. Tarun was very interested in building batteries. I was also very interested in building vehicles, and the primary problem which we saw ultimately was that uh, we want to ensure that everyone has electric vehicles in their hand, and we realized that the problem was not that there were no electric vehicles in the market, but the problem was the quality of electric vehicles were nowhere compared to the quality of petrol vehicles out there. Petrol vehicles were so far superior than the electric vehicles that any serious customer would never buy an electric vehicle. So just building a battery would not have solved the problem, because the whole perception of electric vehicles was not great. At the same time, the performance was not great. So essentially, there was no serious product out there. So what we'll do is building batteries for a vehicle which is not interesting for a customer. So I think once we sort of put down the real problem statement out there for electric vehicles to be successful, I think it was not much of convincing which was required with Tarun out there. Well, what followed later on, the challenges, I think probably Tarun, you can talk about that.
The challenges have been many, Naveen. I think the first earliest challenge that I kind of remember is that um, the startup hype was very real, and everybody had a lot of yarn around how to go about building a startup. And the general wisdom or counsel was sell something quickly, right? You get some customers first, and then iterate. And while I do agree that it makes a lot of sense in internet or in software, at least in internet, consumer internet, it makes almost no sense building a hardware, building vehicle. You can't like just you don't want to launch a vehicle like in 1 year somehow and then sort of wing it as you fix issues. And our approach from day one was we want to build a complete vehicle, right? And everybody's advice was no, don't build a complete vehicle. Like just buy a battery, buy a motor, buy an Activa frame, and just assemble it somehow. And see if somebody wants to buy an electric vehicle. I mean, why? It's a good vehicle. Why do people not want to buy it? I don't think we need to demonstrate that people want to buy scooters in India, right? I think what we need to prove is that we can build those scooters in India. So if I don't even build them, what have we created as value? So I think that was the first big challenge. We wanted to do deep tech. We wanted to do significantly challenging engineering work in India, and a lot of people were not supportive of that. Then, as the years went past, I think our next big issue was usually around talent and building a team. Not super easy building teams to do product development in India, and I would say even now it's one of the biggest challenges.
Swapnil and Tarun, I see that your early, support you got from the IIT Madras and one of the alumni. Do you feel that's the right way? Initially, you shell out your equity or share in your company, stake in your company. You have sold a stake to Hero MotoCorp. I think they invested 3, 4 rounds. You have Sachin and Vinny Bansal investing in your company in multiple rounds. You have a lot of venture capitalists also, many investing in your company. What would be your advice for somebody who's starting out? Is it bootstrap is a better idea, or you get early investor? That's a better idea when we talk about scalability. What would be your advice after being into it for about 8 9 years now?
I think if you know what you want to do, holding yourselves back for capital is a bad idea. So please, if you can, do raise capital. In fact, raise more if you can. Especially if you're doing a lot of engineering, your product, your manufacturing, it'll take a lot of capital. We've generally erred on the side of raising more capital than what the first plan would have said. And I'm very glad that we made those mistakes, because every time we put up a plan, um, in the early years it needed 3 or 10 times more, right? I think Ather would have died many years back had we been more stingy in raising capital, or attracting investors. And honestly, people taking stake, it's only the right thing to do. Everybody's got to become rich in this together. It won't be just two people who create value.
Hero MotoCorp, which is already a big giant in two-wheeler space. How did you convince them to come and invest in your company not once but multiple times? What really transpired between you and them? What led to their confidence in your company?
Naveen, sorry, blanked out just for a minute. You're asking about Hero?
Yeah, Hero MotoCorp. Yes.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So this is many years back, early 2016. We'd done a vehicle demo. We showed for the first time what a 450 could look like, and that got a lot of attention, I think, nationally. And Hero's strategy team reached out, and they were very keen to sort of just connect and understand how we're thinking about electric, what we think is important. So going back all the way up to early 2016, we started having a few conversations. And early on, we were not sure, like, how do we even collaborate? Like, we don't. I'm not sure how to start a work with the largest two-wheeler OEM. But later that year, in 2016, we had a funding round coming together. So we had a few investors who were coming together to invest a sizable quantum. And when he heard about it, they came in and they were like super keen to invest, and they were very clear that, listen, we believe the future is electric. We believe that's where all vehicles are headed, and we would love to build them too. But maybe our vehicles will take a few years, right? The overall transition is going to take some time. It's not going to happen in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years for us.
Did
But
you
we
did you
want to
see them?
back.
Did you see them as a potential investor? And what were the toughest question probably asked by them when you went to pitch them to invest in your company?
Actually, no, we didn't see them early on as an investor. We thought, we're discussing some sort of a collaboration, maybe around charging or something. Right?
Okay.
It's when Hero reached out, and when this, so because they kept in touch, they knew that something's cooking, and it was raising more capital. So at the right time, we managed to we happened to have the right conversation, and one thing led to another. I think the clincher was how Hero and Mr. Pavan saw electric over the next few years. We saw the clarity in very few places. It was not like, oh, we think electric can be interesting. It was more like, electric is inevitable. Every single vehicle will be electric in the next 10 years, right? So we want to know how do we partner with players who will be leading this space, because our future is also the same. And I think that was a very refreshing thing to hear.
So just it's been quite some time now. How much have you raised so far, and how do you see their going forward plan? We don't see many electric scooters right now on the street. Do you think you have delayed a bit because we saw one company coming making aggressive plans, and then we see sudden action taking place in the two-wheeler space? Do you think you lost some time in terms of reaching the scale, or you think you're on track?
I think there's a LOTR saying that's coming to my mind. Result is never late. Okay, I think maybe too much cultural difference. No, we don't think we're late. We'd always planned this. When we launched 450 in 2018, we had told people, including media, that the next 2 years is about stabilizing the architecture. I think this has to be seen as a long-term game. It's not land grab as much as one may want to make it sound like. Um, Automotive companies have had 30, 40 years stabilizing their platforms. And I think even Tesla took 14 years to stabilize and get to Model S. And I think it's a capital mistake to not invest the time and not have the patience to have a stable vehicle, to have stable technology, or stable manufacturing or supply chain. So we always knew that we want to spend the next 2 years doing that. We always knew we will start scaling up only once that happens. In fact, we think it's amazing timing that just about when we decided to start scaling up, which is literally November last year, the EV markets become so attractive. I know it sounds bad, but petrol prices went up to 105. The new FAME policies came in, and I think all the stars kind of aligned at the perfect time. Because if this had happened 18 months back, we still wouldn't have been able to scale up because we knew that we wanted to stay focused on getting the product and getting the technology right. So from our perspective, this is amazingly brilliant time.
What has been the toughest time for you in the last 9 years? Do you think right now is the competition beefing up? Do you think this is the most difficult time, or when you were setting up, trying to convince investor, trying to expand your business, or how do you describe the toughest time period for Ather Energy, both of you?
I would say the toughest times are not what people are seeing outside. I think the toughest times have been inside. And Swapnil, maybe you should talk about like because I don't think most people understand what has been the toughest part. It's easy to imagine that fundraising is the toughest piece, but that's not really the hardest one.
Right. I think, yeah, I think we've seen probably 2 or 3 different instances of tough time because manufacturing startup is very different, right? Like you in a more software based system, you might be you're okay to make certain mistakes and they don't penalize you as much, but in a manufacturing startup, you make a small mistake and then things can really blow up. So I think this is just before the launch of the 450, I would say, almost 1.5 year before the launch of 450. We thought that we are ready. We are ready to launch, and then one fine day we realized that the motor manufacturer we're working with and in the early days the cell manufacturer we're working with, they're not going to be able to scale up. They have financial problems and they're not going to be able to scale up, which meant that we had to just before launch of the vehicle, we had to redesign the complete vehicle with a new set of batteries and with new set of motors. And I think that was like a big step back for us because setback for us rather, because we were completely taken by shock. And that was the time when we realized how important is it to make certain early choices. If you make this early choices wrong in the start, they can really bite you back in later days. But yes, we were able to thankfully we had a very, very great team, and because we had done complete engineering within Ather, we were able to get out of that setback very, very quickly. But that was I think that one point was the real.
I think both these things hit us within probably a week or two of each other, and this is 60-70% of the vehicle, right? You've been building this for the last 2-3 years. You're getting ready to launch in 6 months, and then suddenly you're like, okay, 70% of what you've done, yeah, scrap all of that. You're not even it's not even a different version is coming. The entire supply chain is out. Honestly, this was a moment that we could have just so yeah.
So how do you see the current situation? We see e-scooter or electric vehicle hitting the headlines every day with mega investment, mega expansion plans coming up. For you guys, how does it look like? Do you feel happy that finally you have arrived, or you see the roadblocks still there? What kind of adoption do you see in electric vehicle space in India?
I think with the new policies that we have, I've been saying it in a lot of places and I'll say it here again. It's in many cities, it is now a borderline emotional decision to still buy a petrol scooter. because the economics and almost everything is extremely in favor of electric now. I don't think there are too many bottlenecks. I think there is some work left to do, let's say on the charging infrastructure side. But honestly, I think things are looking pretty exciting. And they're exciting now because early on, selling electric was about creating a new market. And that's what we did at Ather. We spent the first few years creating a new opportunity, a new market, a new customer for Ather 450. But I think now the market is quickly flipping and it's now about substitution. Taking a petrol scooter or a petrol bike buyer and converting them into electric. And that's a massive opportunity. We're talking about more than 200 million vehicles on the road that all need to go electric. So you can imagine that we're super excited about the opportunity.
Going forward, what is going to be your main target? Are you going to consolidate right now, or are you going to further raise
Sorry,
funds?
one second. Somehow, 1 minute, can't hear you.
Yes,
Hello,
we
can you
could
hear
hear.
me?
Yeah, we can, Tarun. So,
Sorry, couldn't hear you.
so just want to understand at this point in time, you have adequate investment, you have funds already. So going forward, what are the two, three focus area that you see?
I think the big focus for us over the coming 18 to 24 months is first and foremost scaling up our supply chain. Uh, we've already seen like a 5-6x scale up happen in the last 6 months, but now given the current market, we need to scale up our supply chains by 15 to 20 times over the next 2 years. So there's a lot of investment, a lot of work that needs to go in towards that. The next big focus area is going to be expanding our product portfolio. We have one scooter line and two variants in it. We want to expand this to cover more and more use cases across more and more geographies in the country. And the third big focus area would be investing in technology. Ather 450 was a benchmark product, was a big leap in the electric space in India. But I think what will keep Ather ahead and what will keep accelerating the change is for Ather to be able to do that again and again, which means more investments in market leading technology. So supply chain, product portfolio, and then technology. These will be the three big focus
Do
areas
you
for us.
wish to expand beyond two wheeler, or you will remain a two wheeler player?
For the next 3 to 4 years, our focus will be only on two-wheelers. Two-wheelers
After
and
that,
charging
you may
infrastructure.
consider. It's going to be a natural progression, like you started from battery pack, then scooter. Now it could be that some partner, some situation comes in, you probably get into other segment. Does it look like
Maybe
that?
we go back to battery packs.
Okay, okay, that's an interesting answer. Before I go and invite the expert, one last and final question. Just want to understand, how does your pricing work when you get feedback from the market? Your vehicles are priced above 1 lakh, 1,25,000, and so on. uh, is it accepted well, or you think that's the price is something that you need to rework, or how does it work?
No, I think the pricing's landed pretty well. We've seen a very sharp uptick even before the newly revised subsidies. There is obviously a bigger and bigger market as you are able to reduce price points, but we're also very careful not to drop prices so rapidly that the business model tanks. We don't want to do negative gross margins. I think that hurts the entire space. So very careful about balancing that. But despite that, especially with the new subsidies, like you can buy a 450 plus at like 1,10,000, 1,15,000 in Ahmedabad or Delhi right now. These are fantastic prices. I think prices
How
are
many
working out very
units
well.
are you selling right now monthly, and how much did you sell in H1 and last fiscal year?
So I mean, we are not discussing sales figures.
That's but that's a very important number for us to share. But nevertheless, let me invite the expert for today. We have Ashim Sharma from Nomura. He will be putting his take in the e-scooter business, and he can probably directly pose few questions to the founders that we have today. Ashim, over to you.
Ashim, I think, is on mute. I think Ashim
You
is
are,
on mute.
Ashim, you need to unmute yourself.
All right,
Yeah,
sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah. That's a
it's
glad
very well.
to, meet all of you, albeit on screen itself. So Tarun, Swapnil and me. Well, I think as far as the two-wheelers goes and what we were just hearing also, I think it is probably emerging as one of the hottest segments in the EV space. A lot of factors going in favor of that. First and foremost being the price delta between conventional ICE and an EV two-wheeler is not that much, especially after the new FAME incentives have kicked in, coupled with what some states are also giving over and above, the GST reduction and the road tax reduction, etc. Of course, at a total cost of ownership level, there is clearly an advantage when we see the high fuel prices. Also, in terms of charging, I think it's better suited than other vehicle types because a two-wheeler can get much closer to your house. Also, you can carry the battery home if it is having that kind of an arrangement in it because the battery size isn't that big. So yeah, given these factors in mind, I think it is becoming rightly so the hottest segment in the EV vehicular space. However, some challenges still remain, and I think as Tarun Swapnil would also concur that right now the adoption is low. So what Tarun calls an emotional decision, I would also say is more based on consumer acceptance. So when you see a lot of vehicles of one type flying around you, you are more keen to try it out yourself as well. Otherwise, sometimes since a two-wheeler for the one who's buying a two-wheeler is a substantial purchase, a large amount of his or her money gets invested in it. So they do not want to be one of the first ones to try it out. So it's like I wait for my neighbor to do it, my neighbor waits for his neighbor to do it, and things like that. So that's one thing. The second is, while as said, charging is becoming easier and all of that, some parts of India still reel under things like power cuts, etc. So, that thing also comes into mind that will I sometimes face a situation where it's not possible to charge it because all said and done, the charging network isn't as widespread as, say, the current petrol pump network in the country. And rightly so, even in most of the cities right now. So that's the second, I think, big challenge that needs to be overcome. Third is, I think, so Ather products certainly is a very good product and an aspirational product, but I think also people to see if, the lineup expands to more of sort of the more economical segment of the market. And people would be looking, I'm sure companies, maybe Ather and even others would be thinking about covering the other segments of the market as well. So once you have a widespread product portfolio, wide set of options available, consumers would also be, more set of consumers would be willing to try out the EV two-wheeler products as well.
Ashim, if two questions you have to ask Tarun and Mehta, what would be those two questions? And I think Tarun and Swapnil will be able to answer right here. For the
Sure.
startup companies or those entrepreneurs who are going to take a plunge in this space, can you ask few questions to them from on their behalf?
Yes, sure. I think so. As I was just mentioning also, I think, you started at that of the end of the market where, product has that kind of acceleration, styling, all of that. It becomes a very aspirational product to have. Right? And we saw many others started also at more of the economical side of the market. So primarily the USP was around that this is, non-polluting, of course, but also more economical vehicle to drive. But I think in your case, it was more about, this is more of a lifestyle vehicle to have. So any reasons why you, took a very different step in the market, given that you're one of the pioneers in this as well?
Okay, I'll take it. I wouldn't call it lifestyle. Ashim, I would say it's it's following the natural trend of how adoption begins. Any new technology is not going to be adopted by mass market customers on day one. It's going to be adopted by early adopters, and there's this entire technology adoption curve, right? So the key is to understand what do early adopters really want in the first phase. EVs had existed before Ather came around, right? In India, we had 60, 70 companies trying to sell electric scooters back in 2010, 2011. None of them were successful. Uh, why so? Because I think people fundamentally misread what is it that the first set of customers really want to buy. Early adopters want an exciting story. They want to look good on their product. They want the world to know that they made a smart choice, right? They don't want to be people who are seen as stingy people who saved 30 paise per kilometer to buy a product. That's not a very smart decision. You can get away with that if you're doing what Geo did to the entire market, which is have a product that's like 10 times cheaper. But when an Activa is 80, 90K, you don't have 20,000 rupee electric scooters emerging. Right? So our view was that, hey, listen, people are going to buy our products, they want a fantastic story. So it's not about lifestyle purchase, it's about building the best scooter possible. It's not very different from what successful EV companies have done globally. That's what Tesla did. That's what companies in Taiwan have done. And I think that's how every technology takes off. So which is why we did that. And I think we've been very focused that the first few years has to help us build a solid brand, right? Customers have to believe that buying Ather is as good as buying any of the legacy OEM guys, right? Buying a Honda, buying a TVS, buying a Bajaj, buying a Hero, right? You don't want your brand to be seen as, okay, I don't know if I trust these guys. So building that kind of a product helps you achieve all these things together. Obviously, as the technology improves and as more and more consumers become comfortable with the idea of buying electric, it makes sense to start reducing the price points and go after wider markets. And that's what will happen to us also in the coming years.
Right. Yeah.
If we want to understand Am I audible?
Yeah, Ravi.
Yeah. So just want to understand if there is a problem statement that you have to share. You are running this company. What would be 2, 3 pain point that you want to be solved by a third party? Probably I'm trying to create a space for a probably new startup that could come and solve your problem that will be important for you. The biggest pain point or problem statement that you have right now as an electric scooter manufacturer.
Swapnil's been looking at a lot of supply chain and engineering problems.
Maybe.
If you could give a precise 1 or 2 questions.
But I think there's still a lot of work in the Indian ecosystem to improve the quality of the supply chain. I think if we have to sort of take really build like a quality ecosystem, we need to sort of get to a place where we have very, very strong quality in our supply chain. And I think any products which help in delivering great quality in supply chain, I think that's something which will be very, very important, and not just for electric vehicles, but any manufacturing which comes up in
Any specific products that you are having scarcity or that you think is the biggest hurdle for you when it comes to expanding your business or making your business more viable, which you need to be addressed immediately on priority?
No, I think not something is very specific, but in general, there is a need for improving the quality of the supply chain in general. I think the electronics
just building on what Swapnil said, a lot of the supply chain today is habituated to deliver good quality but cannot handle fast moving changes. And the thing about electric vehicles is technology is moving very fast. So manufacturing side changes are happening very, very frequently. A lot of the supply chain today is used to dealing with components or modules that once introduced do not change for like 10, 15, 20 years, right? That's what the internal combustion era has been all about. But so they may take 3 years to stabilize, but then they'll be fine and they'll keep producing very, very efficiently for decades together. But the era about electric and connected vehicles completely changes that. We are going to see rapid product introductions by multiple companies and technology changes which will lead to downstream and upstream changes for the entire product. So I think we need suppliers, we need an ecosystem that can handle those changes and still produce high quality. That you would say is still new for the Indian automotive space and definitely in the two-wheeler space.
Is there still something that gives you wakes you up mid of the night and you want to solve, okay, this problem, how will we solve that? Does that moment still come to you? And what are those moments, if you could share as a startup person?
And where all the problems are with us only. Scaling up our supply chain, scaling up our distribution. I don't know who else to blame for those. Maybe charging infra could be one of those opportunities that Nabil you're asking for, where a new entrepreneur or new company could capture a lot of value. Charging infrastructure is certainly one of those opportunities. Otherwise, we would say it's all in supply chain.
Okay. So if you have any question, Ashim, you can go ahead. Then I'll start taking questions from the audience. We'll take only few questions because we are running out of time. So Ashim, if you have any question, please ask. Then I'll move to the audience questions.
Sure, Nabil. So, just one question, since you're talking about the scale up and the quality of the supply chain being an issue. We also understand that you are also relatively new as compared to the OEMs who've been in the market for very long. But do you feel that there is a need also for, say, players like you to who've been sort of the earlier movers in this space to handhold some of the suppliers and bring them up to speed so as to be able to cater to your requirements in a better manner? Of course, there will be others out there who already have a lot of experience, will forge the tie-ups and will scale up the supply chain or maybe improve the quality of the supply chain. But at the same time, are you also planning to undertake some initiatives so that you could play a role with the larger ecosystem, and in turn the supplier benefits and so do you?
Question.
No, I think
Yeah.
it's definitely something which we see as our role, and we do that in some of the areas, especially areas where there does not exist and things around battery and wire harness and some of those things where actually there does not exist an ecosystem already, right? So there we do work with small players and young entrepreneurs like us who are trying to get into either EV space or manufacturing space. We do work with them, and we have had quite a few success in those areas as well.
Thank you, Swapnil. So I'll move to the audience questions. I'll try to take as many as possible. So the first question that we are going to take from LinkedIn, ETAuto LinkedIn page, Ankit Banka, he wants to understand how challenging will be the battery life cycle management for EV OEMs like yourself. Tarun, you're on mute.
Actually, I think we're at a place where our batteries have more life than the product requires it to be honest. Batteries are now dying not because of usage, but because of calendar life. They're literally expiring. It is opening up upsides for us. So we can push in faster and faster charging. We can push in more performance out of the same packs than we otherwise felt was possible. But I wouldn't say that battery life cycle management is the biggest challenge today. It's a challenge that was one of the biggest challenges in the past, but has also seen a ridiculous amount of work over the years. And today, at least for us at Ather, we feel good about where battery lives are.
And if I think if the question is around the end of life of battery, then I think that industry is also maturing. There are quite a few recycling plants and all which are starting to sort of emerge. Typically, the recycling plants are also tied up to the maturity of the EV industry, and if as the EV industry matures, the recycling plants also will start coming up alongside. We've already seen that happen in Europe, and we have seen one or two players come up in India as well. They're in the nascent stage, but I think as the EV industry booms, there will be a boom of the end of life recycling of the batteries as well.
So next question is from Amol Umale. Just will service be a challenge because local garage cannot repair the electric vehicle? How do you deal with that? What's model are we going to adopt? Is it going to be AMC model? What is going to work out in the long run?
Um, I
Even
think
Ashim can add to it here. Just start with you, Tarun. Here.
Right. So I think it's not going to be a big challenge. Electric vehicles need lesser servicing and especially lesser periodical servicing compared to their IC engine counterparts. And initially, I think the first way we are going to see OEMs setting up a fairly aggressive network. The need for a lot of small mom and pop service centers, garages, like the kind that we have today for IC engine, honestly comes down dramatically. I think the government's out to plan this or at least think about it, because that entire industry, that entire vocation that exists for roadside mechanics is going to come under a significant rethink, because that quantum of work is just not going to exist. Yes, there will be work, but it is probably going to be a like 15-20% fraction of what exists in the IC engine side today. Um, and as vehicles become more stable, technology matures more and more. If anything, that need will only come down. So that's what I think will happen.
Ashim, you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I concur the view that the maintenance needs would go down, but the normal mom and pop shops, yeah, may not have so much to do with the transmission, with the engine, but still, things like they also fix brakes today, so that is going to stay. They also, do some sort of repair work of the body. So to that extent, something might be still done by them. Things around, the lighting, etc. So those things are going to stay, but yeah, of course, the engine transmission part goes out of the picture. But I must say here that we talked about all of this when electronics also increased in the vehicle, and it used to be said that nothing's going to be repaired on the roadside. But I think those guys are also very innovative. They figure out the tools to diagnose the vehicle. I've gone to some shops, there is two people, but they have a tool, they fit it into the vehicle, they're able to diagnose what's wrong. So I think they are also going to keep on innovating in that space at the same time. But yeah, certainly the quantum of work will go down.
Ashim, the next question comes from Santosh Sharma. He wants to understand ICE engine two-wheelers will surpass the gasoline. When will it happen? We see a lot of projections coming up. What's your thought in mind looking at the current acceleration because of the rising price of two-wheeler acquisition price for ICE engine, as well as the price hike in terms of petrol? How do you think how soon it can surpass the ICE engine, the electric vehicles?
Yeah, so I think there are a variety of estimates available over there, and starting from somebody talking about what sort of segment of the two-wheeler you're talking about. But this could, it's not going to happen like immediately. It's going to take at least the next, I would say 8 to 9 years, or around about that much, or 10, so as to be able to see that they are kind of becoming almost slightly more than the ICE share of two-wheelers. Because that now, when we are talking about this, we're also talking about at a pan-India level.
So the next question comes from Parichay Gautam. He wants to understand, does Ather have any plans to have an offshoot for the B2B mobility, something on the lines of what Bounce and Yulu are doing in Bangalore region, other startups?
No, Nabil. We are completely focused on the consumer market. We are not going after B2B.
You will remain a B2C brand. So probably this is the last question because of the positive time. We are already 3:45. So last question I'm taking from Vijay Prakash. Do you agree that government and all EV manufacturers should come up with the standard charging socket to tackle the range anxiety? I don't know how is it related, but good answer.
Yeah, Nabil. So no, we 100% agree on that. It's a view that we formed over the last 1 year, that proprietary charging standards do not make sense, especially for the electric scooter and bike market in India. What the country needs is for more and more charging stations to come up, but it's a chicken and egg problem. If somebody wants to set up a charging station, they will have to decide: do they want an Ather charging station, or do they want a Tesla, a TVS charging station, or do they want a Hero charging station, right? And that's like a complete mess of options for them. What the industry needs is a common charging connector, so that people can set up common chargers, and the more common chargers pop up, the more they will then proceed, and they will create more demand for electric vehicles. So the more charging stations we see, the more electric vehicles we see. So we are very strong believers that the industry needs a single standard. And towards that, and it's an interesting thing that this question popped up today, because just a few hours back we announced that Ather is opening up its patents and its IP around our proprietary charging connector. So Ather's charging connector is now available free of cost for usage by any OEM in India, this point onwards forever. In fact, not just that, we have also offered engineering support. If anybody wants integration or supply chain support in figuring out how to use this connector in their architectures, again, free of cost, no strings attached. All we want to see is all of us ideally use the same connector so that we can see more charging stations, because it helps us and it helps them and it helps the entire industry.
Thank you. Fantastic. That's fantastic, Tarun and Swapnil. One last question and then I will wrap up. Ashim, I just want to understand, the battery swapping is going big way. Do you think it will work in passenger cars also, or two-wheeler will be able to lap it very soon? I'll have a comment from all of you.
Sure. So what we've seen is that battery swapping works very well when things move in a fixed loop, especially when the network is not very dense. Things move in a fixed loop. One entity controls the vehicle, the swapping station, both. So then they can plan the routes accordingly, charge the batteries also accordingly. So which is, a case of buses, for example. But at the same time, if you go a little bit eastward to, say, Taiwan, you see how Gogoro has been able to master this swapping network very well by creating a very high density network there, also, with a strong IT backbone alongside it. So given that example, it does seem, possible for vehicles that are commuting within the cities, and therefore could be suited for two-wheelers as well. On the back of this example, at least, it seems to be a good option.
Tarun, Swapnil, are the two-wheeler OEMs working on a standard design for batteries also, so that it is easy to be swapped? What are you doing around that?
Nabil, we are not big fans of swapping. Because we come from the consumer side, right? For the consumer market, we see limited application for it. As Ashim also said, where the usage is very predictable, especially on the B2B side, swapping can play a role. But that's not a market we understand. So today we don't, and also because of a lot of technology and product architecture reasons, it's quite difficult to standardize a battery pack across OEMs. Like the industry couldn't standardize battery packs for mobile phones here. In things like vehicles with battery packs that are like 100 times bigger, and where the technology changes every 2 years, and forget standardizing across multiple OEMs. We today have difficulty ensuring that we have backward compatibility for the model that was launched last year. Uske liye battery pack ensure karna is a difficult task. But now figuring out an industry-wide collaboration and a coalition to make sure that all of us use the same pack and the same standard is it's quite difficult today.
But
I think on the B2B side it's possible.
But some of the competition is trying to bring down the acquisition cost by introducing that swapping model. They are collaborating with the swapping providers. So how is it that going to work out? Don't you think you will miss the bus, or you are not scared? You are sure that my customer is going to be with me. That doesn't matter. Even people are luring with a lower acquisition cost. How are you going to counter?
I think what the lower acquisition cost, that same thing can be achieved by an EMI, honestly. And at the end of the EMI period, you still own the battery. A battery swapping solution, I think we are forgetting that EMIs exist, financing exists, and we don't need the clutch of swapping to reduce the upfront price. Because in swapping, you will have to pay a lot more, not just the cost of the battery, but the cost of additional batteries in the field, the cost of swapping, the cost of infrastructure. So we see swapping as something that helps with charging speed, where the usage is very high and very predictable. But if all you're looking for is a way to reduce upfront price, give a financing, give an EMI, give batteries on subscription. They all achieve the exact same ask.
But EV finance is also not that easy, that we
Oh no,
understand.
no, that's
Let's
changed. That's changed massively. Last 5 months, I think we've now reached a point as an OEM that we have to put a limit on how many banks you're willing to work with, because I think something's happened the last 5 months, and every bank has a mandate. They have to be EV financing. So I think we've had some fantastic partners come on board, and some announcements are due in the next few days. But the financing landscape's changed radically over the last, I would say, 6 months.
Thank you so much. Let's leave it there with a positive note that we have a faster adoption of electrification in India, especially in the two-wheeler. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining ETAuto Startup Adda. This show is going to continue every Tuesday, 3 p.m. onward, with a new set of founders and experts. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. Stay safe.